Welcome to this deep dive into Surah Al-Imran, specifically verses 151 through 175. You could almost think of this passage as a divine debriefing, a kind of post-action report on one of the most critical moments in early Islamic history, and what it all means for us, even today.
And that's really the question at the heart of these verses. See, the Muslims had just experienced this incredible, stunning victory at the Battle of Badr, and then not long after, they suffer a shocking setback at the Battle of Uhud. The confusion, the questions, you can feel it. And these ayahs, they don't just offer comfort, they provide a searingly honest analysis of what went wrong and why.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with that burning question right after Uhud. Then we'll dissect the anatomy of the setback itself. We'll look at the role of divine mercy and leadership in the middle of chaos, the intense test of conviction it created, the incredible redefinition of the life of martyrs, and finally, the ultimate lesson on where our fear should truly lie. So right after the battle, you can just imagine the believers are wounded, they're grieving, and they're asking this very, very human question: how could this have happened? I mean, the Prophet himself is right there among them. They have Allah's promise of support. What went wrong? Now notice how Allah frames the answer here. It's so powerful. Before he even gives the reason, he gives them perspective. He reminds them of their huge victory at Badr, where they actually inflicted a loss twice as great on the enemy. Only then does he address their shocked question, Enna hadha, from where is this? And the answer is just so direct. It's blunt, and it forces you to look inward. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Say it is from your own self. Okay, so the cause was internal, but what exactly went wrong? The next few verses are like a divine audit, pinpointing the specific human errors that caused this reversal of fortune. The verse lays it out like a chain reaction, right? It identifies three critical failures. First, fashiltum, you lost your nerve, you showed weakness. Second, tanazatum, you started disputing among yourselves. And third, asatum, you disobeyed. And what was the catalyst for all this? It happened right after Allah showed them ma tohibun, that which you love. A clear, direct reference to the spoils of war that tempted the archers to leave their posts. And this mistake was so severe, it could have been a total wipeout. Mohudi's commentary really puts this into perspective, highlighting that it was only by some perplexing divine intervention that they were saved. The enemy had the upper hand, but then they just inexplicably lost their nerve and left without finishing the job. The psychological weight of this, it must have been immense. The Quran has this incredible phrase for it, ghamman bi ghammin, distress upon distress. This wasn't just one kind of sadness. It was the grief of defeat, piled on top of the terrifying rumor that the Prophet had been killed, piled on top of losing 70 of their companions. And all of that was made worse by the fear that their home, Medina, was now completely vulnerable. It was an intense spiritual training, designed to make them tougher for whatever was coming next. But then, after all this intense critique, the tone just beautifully shifts. It goes from critique to comfort. The verses now zoom in on how Allah and his messenger managed this crisis and, against all odds, held the community together. Right in the middle of all that terror and chaos, something, miraculous happens. Allah sends down Aminan Nuwasan, a secure, calming drowsiness that just washed over the true believers. Can you imagine that? Surrounded by fear, a supernatural peace just descends and allows you to rest. It was a clear sign from Allah, separating those whose faith was firm from those who were lost in panic. And this wasn't just some vague feeling, It was real. It was tangible. The companion Abu Talha actually said that this sense of peace was so overpowering that his swords literally kept slipping from his hand. That's a physical manifestation of divine security if I've ever heard one. Now the focus shifts to the leadership of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And Allah makes it so clear. He says it was only by a special mercy from him that the Prophet was linta, or gentle and lenient with them. After a mistake this big, you'd expect a leader to be harsh, to be angry. But Allah says, look, if you'd been fazan ghaliza al-qalb, rude in your speech and hard-hearted, they would have scattered. But it was his gentle, forgiving, and consultative leadership that healed the community. You see, Uhud wasn't just about swords and arrows. It was a spiritual test, a real crucible. The intense pressure of defeat served this critical purpose. It exposed the true state of everyone's heart, and it drew a bright line between the believers who were all in and the hypocrites who were just along for the ride. The Quran gives a name to the sickness in the hypocrites' hearts, zanna al-jahiliya, the assumption of ignorance. So what is that? At its core, it's thinking bad thoughts about Allah. It's the belief that maybe he'd abandon his own prophet or that his divine plan could be derailed by human mistakes. It's a fundamental, deep-seated lack of trust in God's wisdom and his power.
And you can see this split, this difference, crystal clear in what they say. The hypocrites, the ones who bailed before the battle even started, they came up with this flimsy excuse. Oh, if we knew there was actually going to be a fight, we totally would have come. But contrast that with the real believers who, when faced with a new threat later, their response was this powerful declaration of faith. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is enough for us, and He is the best one to trust. The verse really drills down on this excuse from Abdullah bin Ubay and his group who turned back. Law na'lamu qitalan. If only we knew there'd be a real fight. The Quran just cuts right through it, exposing it for the hollow excuse it was. And then it delivers this absolutely chilling verdict on where they stood spiritually. On that day, they were closer to disbelief than they were to faith. But, amidst all the pain, all the loss of Uhud, something incredibly powerful comes out of it. One of the most perspective-shifting revelations in the entire Quran, which completely redefines what it means to die in the cause of Allah. Okay, you have to appreciate the linguistic power here. The verse starts with "Wala tahsabanna." See that extra na sound at the end? In Arabic, that's like putting something in bold, italics, and underlining it all at once. It means, do not ever, ever think, not for a second, that those killed in Allah's way are amwatan, just dead bodies. The command is absolute. Bal ahya'un. No, rather, they are alive, with their Lord being provided for. This is a total paradigm shift. It's not just a nice thought, it's a command to completely change how we think about life and death and sacrifice. The highest honor isn't just a reward later on in paradise. It's a brand new form of life that starts the very moment they pass. And to give us just a small glimpse of what that life is like, there's a hadith that explains their state. They experience so much joy and honor that they are the only people who, after seeing the afterlife, actually wish they could come back to this world. And not to see their families or anything like that, but for one reason only: to have the chance to experience the bliss of being martyred for Allah's cause all over again. So, the passage starts wrapping up by pulling all these threads together into one powerful takeaway. After the failure, the test, the mercy, what's the way forward? It's a path of renewed strength built on a correct understanding of fear. And this isn't just theory, they put it into practice immediately. The very next day after Uhud, a rumor starts that the enemy is coming back. So the Prophet calls the Muslims to go out and pursue them. And the verse praises those who, even though they were injured, istajabu, they answered the call. They marched out to a place called Humra al-Asad, proving to the enemy and more importantly to themselves that their spirit was unbroken. This was the lesson in action. And this brings us to the grand finale, the ultimate lesson. When rumors of a massive enemy army start spreading, Allah reveals exactly where that fear is coming from. Innama dhalikumus shaitan, that is only Satan. That word innama restricts the cause. It's not the enemy you should fear, it's only Satan trying to make you afraid of his allies. And then comes that final transformative command, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِي إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. So fear them not, but fear me if you are truly believers. It completely reorients where our fear belongs. So at the end of the day, the entire experience of Uhud, from the bitterness of defeat to the sweetness of divine mercy, it all boils down to this one profound reorientation. And it asks us to look at our own lives and consider, what are we afraid of? Are we motivated by the fear of people, of losing something, of failing? Or, as these verses command, is our true north, our one guiding principle, the awe and the reverential fear of God alone?